Bonsoir à toutes et à tous. Merci d'être avec nous pour ce 133e vol d'Ariane Espace. J'aurai le plaisir de commenter ces images avec Gaston Rabot, un véritable spécialiste, ancien Coel. Nous sommes dans la salle de presse du bâtiment Jupiter et les spectateurs nippons pourront écouter des commentaires en japonais. Quant aux anglophones, eh bien, eux, ils confieront leurs oreilles à Joshua Jean-Paul. Hi, Joshua.
Hi, Pierre, and hello, everybody. Welcome again to Kourou for tonight's live broadcast of Ariane Space Flight number 133. The countdown is proceeding for tonight's single launch of a Japanese satellite, NSat 110. I'm going to be joined in the broadcast booth by my friend Pierre Michele Roviera. But before we go upstairs, we're going to take a look at the summary to brief you on what's happening for tonight's launch. Before we do that, we're going to have a word from our Japanese commentators.
日本の皆様、おはようございます。ここフランス領ギアナクールー打ち上げ基地より私小橋千恵と高松清が生中継でお伝えいたします。
今年8回目の打ち上げとなるアリアンフライト133アリアン4ロケットを使って日本の宇宙通信株式会社と JSAT 株式会社の共同運用となる通信衛星 NSat-110 を静止トランスファー軌道に打ち上げます。打ち上げまであと約30分。クールーからの生中継をお楽しみください。
Et tout de suite, le sommaire de cette émission.
Tonight you'll be able to learn about the launcher campaign for the Ariane 42L vehicle. We'll see how the launcher's various stages are put together until she's rolled out onto the pad. We'll do the same for the satellite. That also followed its own campaign, and that includes various testing and checks done here at the CSG. And we'll meet the co-operators of NSat 110, two Japanese telecom giants, Space Communications Corporation and the JSAT Corporation. And we'll also meet representatives from the Launch Base Safety Service to learn about its role in protecting both the launch vehicle during its flight and the local population. Well, hello again, folks. From Kourou, the weather is fine. The night is just beginning. We're counting down to under 27 minutes to the launch tonight for NSat. You can see by the status panels, green is the color. Pierre Michele, we didn't get your job. You are in the directorate, the launch directorate, yeah, usually?
Yes, you're right. So I work in a department which is in charge of the launch complex operations.
Very good. You saw the summary. Now go to the vital statistics for tonight's mission.
Tonight's mission, Flight 133, is relying on the 42L version of the Ariane launcher with 2 liquid strap-on boosters. The launcher was rolled out to the pad on September 12 and mated with its satellite on October 2nd. NSat 110, built by Lockheed Martin, is jointly operated by SCC and JSAT. It will provide service with 24 Ku band transponders. The spacecraft arrived in Kourou on August 28th. The Ariane vehicle will put the satellite into geostationary transfer orbit, then under its own power, NSat 110 will reach its final location at 110 degrees east over Borneo to provide Japan with TV, internet, and data services.
Right, the launch coming up in just under half an hour. We'll get an explanation of the greens that you're seeing on the screen shortly when we have a bit of time. Tonight, the 8th launch of the year and the 99th Ariane 4, but only the 12th Ariane 42L. And when we get a moment later on the broadcast, we'll tell you why there only have been 12 Ariane 42Ls. But for the moment, take a look at the latest news from the Ariane Space Corporation. Ariane Space is signed with Intelsat for 3 more launches. The contract, inked on the 26th of September in Washington, D.C., is for Intelsat 905, 906, and 907 to be put aloft by an Ariane 4 or 5 vehicle between the middle of next year and the end of 2002. Ariane Space Flight 130 successfully lifted off on September 14th. The sixth flight of the Ariane 5, the second this year, further confirmed the power and reliability of the new generation vehicle. The Ariane 5 delivered 2 more telecom satellites and long-standing customers, Astra2B and GE7. Ariane 5 is looking ahead, however, and is undergoing a series of upgrades, notably in its upper stage, which will greatly increase performance and payload capacity, enabling it to meet all mission requirements for the coming decade. Ariane Space's Jean-Claude Vincent explains. Behind me, you can see the umbilical tower. It's completely closed now, as you can see, but very soon we're going to be adding the cryotechnic arms, also called the propellant feeder arms, also the third stage filling apparatus. These arms are actually like human arms. They open up and fold and swing in towards the tower. We are coming to you from the Jupiter Mission Control Room, as we always do. Jupiter, this is the Jupiter 2 building, began service in 1996 for the Ariane 5 program. But there are many other people here at work at the space base, at the Space Center, which is very large. We have a camera here. We also have a camera up at the Launch Center, where we're going to take you now. This is where you are usually working, right, Pierre Michele?
Yeah, you are correct. I usually work at the CDL, the Launch Control Center. And at this moment, the operational teams are running the final operation to prepare Ariane for the flight. Now, 22 minutes to go. The propellant loading is over, and we are making the topping up to maintain the right level of propellant. And we are in the so-called waiting margin.
These are the crews that are checking out all the final details for the launch vehicle only, yeah?
Yes.
Okay, we have... There's Mr. Ueda from SCC. As you know, tonight we have 2 co-operators for the satellite, the JSAT people and the SCC people, 2 telecom giants from the nation of Japan. It's the 6th launch by Ariane for SCC, and we have 1 satellite but 2 films. Here's the SCC film. Space Communications Corporation started telecommunication services via a communication satellite, including video, sound, and data transmissions, in 1989. Since then, it has always taken the lead in the satellite telecommunications business in Japan.
Superbird is the communication satellite for Space Communications Corporation. Superbird A and B are identical satellites that provide services over Japan and its neighboring countries. Superbird C is an international satellite providing coverage for the complete Asia-Pacific region, including Australia and New Zealand.
These Superbird satellites are monitored and controlled by 2 TCNR stations, one located in Ibaraki and the other in Yamaguchi, by fully secured systems 24 hours a day, 365 days a year.
Many governments and enterprises and other organizations use Superbirds to establish nationwide telecommunication network at low cost.
More than 80% of Japanese broadcasting companies use satellite news gathering via Superbirds. Moreover, Superbird supports many public utilities, such as electric power companies and gas companies. Satellite communications by Superbird offer greater resistance to disasters than terrestrial systems. Superbird can forge that critical link to the restoration of services in emergency situations.
Superbird forms VSAT networks called the LASCOM network, which links local authorities throughout Japan. More than 4,300 stations are incorporated by LASCOM, one of the largest VSAT networks worldwide.
Internet services will change the presence of communication services throughout the world. Direct PC service is a high-speed, low-cost data communication service linking personal computers by a satellite communications line. Direct PC is used by more than 15,000 Earth stations.
With high-speed broadband service HitPops, combining satellite and internet is our new service. HitPops impacts on Japanese business.
In October of 2000, Superbird B2 started working. And Space Communications Corporation plans to launch Superbird 5. Superbird 5 will be positioned at 110 degrees east.
We believe that our Superbird satellite will continue to challenge new communication by offering various applications and dedicated customer service in the future.
So there you have the SCC people. This is a shot of the fairing, inside of which is the satellite tonight, cooperated by two very different companies, but both old friends of Arianespace. However, there's Mr. Miwa of JSAT. Arianespace playing a big role in developing the telecoms in the Japanese nation, signing 17 contracts with operators. The second film on the way now from JSAT. Take a look.
JSAT is building the infrastructure of a rewarding new information society. We also offer a full range of new services as a multimedia satellite company bringing innovation.
A new satellite, JSAT 110, is to be launched in the autumn of 2000. It'll be positioned at 110 degrees east longitude, sharing the same orbital slot as Japan's broadcasting satellite. This satellite has exciting potential for offering new multimedia services. JSAT's satellite fleet will increase to 8, making it the largest satellite communication enterprise in Asia. JSAT will be well positioned to enter new areas of business.
The Yokohama Satellite Control Center, YSCC, monitors JSAT satellites around the clock. The Gumna Satellite Control Stations, GSCS, is a backup facility ready for action in case of a disaster disables the Yokohama Center.
JSAT's fleet of communication satellites like JSAT 1B and JSAT 2 are used commercially for a wide range of purposes, from inventory tracking in the retail and distribution industry to corporate broadcasting networks linking branches nationwide.
Japan's first satellite digital broadcasting service is Sky Perfect TV, which began operation in October 1996. It provides a full range of news, lifestyles, sports, movies, music, and other entertainments. Offering one of the richest platforms in the world, it realizes a high standard in the multi-channel age.
Today, the need is emerging for new kinds of services, transcending the boundaries of conventional broadcasting and telecommunications. Responding to these requirements, JSAT and NTT established a joint venture called NTT Satellite Communications in April of 1998. The new firm offers services that harness the extremely high speed and high volume transmission capabilities of satellites.
To enrich JSAT's international transmission services via communications satellite, a dedicated turnaround station was established in Sunset Beach in Hawaii. The station relays sports events, distributes video programming, and supports a wide range of global communication needs. In addition, JSAT is using a relay station in Singapore to introduce international transmissions from Europe.
Future communications via satellite will be more practical and more enjoyable. Staying in close touch with the leading edge of technology, JSAT will continue to pursue new dreams for the future of communications.
衛星を利用してる
インターネットライブ見て、それから JSAT の衛星を利用しているスカパーで映画なんてどう？
じゃなくて、もう今日私 JSAT の衛星を利用してる予備校の授業があるから。
じゃあさ JSAT の衛星を利用しているコンビニで買い物して、それから JSAT の衛星を利用しているなんだっけ、JSAT
衛星を利用したより豊かなコミュニケーション
To the satellite century.
JSAT.
And here we have the status panel where we check the readiness of not only the launcher and the spacecraft, but all the systems we need for this mission. And we have all this information to the Jupiter Mission Control, where we can see our Director General, Mr. Rossignol. So as you saw from the lights, all the lights are green, everything is okay. And in a few minutes, a short film about Ariane space and the new launcher Ariane 5. Sorry, I forget.
Versatile. Flexible. Powerful.
Attention pour le début de la séquence synchronisée. Top moins 7 minutes. Donc les H0 moins 3 minutes. Correct.
Déroulement correct.
À tous, UDDO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Top. Allumage Vulcain. Allumage ERP. Décollage. Propulsion normale. Tous les paramètres sont normaux à bord.
All systems normal.
Trajectoire normale.
All okay on board.
Ready to serve your business.
Ready to serve your business tonight, serving the business of SCC and JSAT in Japan, also the end users of the Japanese nation. We are here in Mission Control. You can see there's some of the customers, Messieurs Kakutuchi and of SCC and Monsieur Hayasaka of JSAT. We're here in Mission Control, but again, the shots of the CDL, which is about 14 kilometers away from us, close to the launch pad. What do we need two launch centers for?
Well, you can compare the Jupiter Mission Control to the control tower of the spaceport where we checked. So not only the launcher, the spacecraft, but all the systems needed, like the telemetry station, radar station, telecommunications, and the weather as well, of course. The CDL, on the other way, is the real cockpit of the launcher, where we can control and check everything about the launcher.
It's Pierre Mosco, who's the head of this base, the CSG. Go ahead. Right. One of those services is the safety. We talked to them this week. Take a look. I think you're going to find this interesting.
Safety at CEG is a task of the French Space Agency, which protects personnel, installations and the environment against the hazards in our activity. What are these dangers? Pyrotechnical, toxic, and traditional industrial risks as well. Our division covers the launcher, the payload, the associated ground installations, and also in the launch phase, which is the final part of the countdown. We participate from the beginning in the research and development phase of the launch system, and also in the operational phase. Finally, in the last phase of the chronology and the flight, we put in place both for the ground and the flight teams to protect local population. To make sure the mission is safe, we give the launcher a flight path within which it can fly with no risk to the population below. The safety team follows the launcher flight inside the path in real time, as you can see in these images.
CVI correct. Reçu, on est en vol premier étage, le lanceur est dans son couloir de vol.
Verticalité nominale.
CVI correct. Confirmé, reçu, toujours en vol premier étage, lanceur dans son couloir de vol.
If the launcher deviated from its nominal trajectory, it is destroyed before crossing the limit of the flight path. And the debris fall back into an authorized area, and there is no risk for the local population. To avoid any other minor problem, Safety Coordination Office can monitor the environmental conditions in the area and provide information for the public via the crisis unit.
Pour confirmer le choix du scénario aide à la décision et également le compte rendu nominal des réseaux environnement, Kourou, Sinnamary.
Safety is a discrete but essential part of space activities, and the CNES does everything possible to protect the public, the ground installations and the environment. We can see another example of ground safety activities inside the operational team at the CDL. These teams prepare the Ariane launch, and safety people cooperate with them to guarantee protection during all phases of the activity.
Et permettent ainsi de garantir en permanence la sécurité de l'ensemble des personnels et du lanceur, bien entendu.
Right, we are coming up on the 6-minute mark, which is a milestone, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But before we do, we had our last weather check before launch, and the weather was, there's a map of the weather. You can find French Guiana on there. It's roughly in the center of, on the coast, away from all the clouds. Now, what did they tell you at the weather service?
Well, the weather is okay. We are, the sky is quite clear, no thunderstorm risk, and no problem with wind.
So we're okay for launch?
So we are okay.
There are certain parameters, of course. We can't launch in any kind of weather, but we can launch in the rain. Rain is not a big problem. No. More lightning is a problem. No. You're going to have the DDO.
Attention pour le début de la séquence synchronisée de lancement. Top, moins 6 minutes, début de la séquence synchronisée.
All right, that's the DDO, also called the Range Operations Manager. He's called out this milestone, the 6-minute mark. The final moments of the final countdown have begun. It's called the synchronized sequence, also the automatic sequence. Automatic because?
Yes, it is automatic because in this phase we have no human interventions, but two computer programs run in parallel. One on an electrical computer and another one for the fluid and pneumatic systems.
One computer checking out all the electric systems and another computer separately
checking? Yes, in fact there are two redundant computers, and they both are in the CDL number 2.
And by fluids it's propellant, I imagine, huh?
Propellant
mainly.
And pneumatic devices as well. So during the first minute, the two computers do really nothing but check each other, and after they do all the operation to prepare the launcher for the liftoff.
All right, we'll get back to that in just a minute, but take a look now at these shots, which were taken about 5.5 hours ago. This is the gantry withdrawal. This is the servicing tower, which was pulled back off of the launcher. happens about 5-6 hours before launch. You can see what the weather was about 5.5 hours ago. It's roughly the same now. We should have clear skies. Why do we wait so long to pull the tower back?
Because you do this operation when all the manual operations are over, so you don't need any more an access to the launcher. For instance, you have one of the final operations is the red flag taken out.
Red flags?
Yeah, red flags are used to identify each item or little protections you want to remove before flight.
Such as hazardous items, would you say? Hazardous
yes,
operations?
Safety devices for pyrotechnical items or protection for aerials and antennas, things like that.
So while the computers are continuing during the 6-minute phase, checking the thousands, I imagine, of vital signs for the launcher, power is passing from the ground onto the
correct.
onboard computers.
Really, in this moment, we have the spacecraft is already in onboard power and its flight configuration. And here we have an image of the two cryotechnic arms.
Yeah, this is an interesting shot because it's the last thing that you're going to see before liftoff. We always like to go into a little bit of detail about it. The cryotechnic arms, also called the propellant feeder arms, you can see them. They're locked into the third stage, and they stay there until almost liftoff. This is the split screen image. One side has hydrogen, one side has oxygen. And what happens is when we get down to H0, or just before H0.
Just before, at 5 seconds before.
At 5 seconds before, the arms are going to swing open.
Yeah.
And you'll see the arms swing open, and if they don't swing open, we don't go anywhere.
Of course.
We have to have the arms open
for
launch.
The two computer system check the arms are well opened before going on the ignition sequence.
And the ignition sequence, as long as we're there, is an interesting thing to explain as well, because you don't just press a button and take off, do you? There's a whole series of maneuvers, and it takes 5 or 6 seconds before we can actually go anywhere.
Yes, you're right, because at exactly 0, we have the ignition of the main engine of the 4 engine of the first stage, plus in this case, the 2 of the liquid strap-on boosters.
And they're ignited at the same time, all 6, yeah?
At 0. And after, it starts a short window of about 4.4 seconds, where the two computer checks all the parameters in the engines.
These are the same computers that you were talking about that do
the
the other
two ground
checks
computers.
for 6 minutes.
That's it.
So these two computers work for 6 minutes solid, all the way down to...
They have a lot of work to do. And in these 4 seconds, they check everything is okay. The engines are running at full power. If everything is okay, at 4.4 seconds in positive time, they give the liftoff order. That is to say, they open 4 big hooks, which are holding the launcher to the ground. And we have the real liftoff. So the liftoff is in positive time.
The liftoff is in positive time. I think that's an interesting point. So you have the motors that are lit at H0. Then you have the first check by these computers of the pressure. Then you have a second check to verify the first check. Yeah?
Yeah, during this 4 seconds, you have 2 little windows for less than half a second each, checking all the parameter.
And then you get the order to open the launch hooks, and then you have liftoff at, what did you say, plus 4.4 seconds. The sequence called ignition and separation function. You'll hear the DDO.
À tous DDO, attention pour H-1 minute.
He's going to call out the 1 minute mark, and we'll be down to the final 60 seconds.
Top, moins 1 minute et décompte.
All right, we're down to the final 60 seconds. The launcher waiting on the pad, the satellite waiting on the pad. The sequence we mentioned checks out I guess it lets the engines reach maximum performance.
Yeah, they are running already at full power, even at ground.
Before they go?
Yeah.
Okay, and Ariane 5 is not like that. Ariane 5 does not have the hooks holding it to the ground.
No, because you have just one engine, and the weight of Ariane 5 is enough to hold it on the ground during this test, steady state test.
All right, we're going to cut away. You'll hear the DDO call out the final 10 seconds of the countdown, the famous 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. And we'll let you watch the launch. And we'll be back when Ariane has cleared the tower. Enjoy the spectacle, everybody.
À tous les DO, attention pour le décompte final. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, unité, feu. Allumage. Décollage.
All right, Ariane underway. You can see the 4 engines. Those are the main engines burning. You can see the 2 boosters on the side. We'll get another shot in a minute from underneath. You'll see the inner ring of the first stage engines and the 2 on the outer ring. 1 minute into the flight. Ariane off into her mission tonight. Weighing at liftoff, by the way, about 370 tons. That's about 1 million pounds. Now, some of you may have noticed on liftoff, what looked like parts of the second stage fell away on liftoff. Did anybody notice that out there? That was quite normal, right?
Yeah, it is normal. It is an outside thermal protection we use to maintain the propellant of the second stage at the right temperature. In fact, it is a storable stage. It has been filled yesterday, and we check and control the temperature by this way. The first stage do not need this because it is much bigger, so it is less sensitive to thermal heating.
Okay, the 4 Viking 5 engines are burning, plus the 2 liquid boosters with about 40 tons of fuel. The boosters will continue...
About 35.
35?
Yeah.
Tons of fuel. The boosters will continue to burn.
Tous les paramètres bord sont normaux et la trajectoire est normale.
DDO says everything is all right, A-OK on board. A few seconds to go before you will probably see the burnout up there.
Extinction des propulseurs d'appoint.
That's the burnout of the boosters. You'll see them drop away in just a minute. There they go.
We saw the separation.
Largage des propulseurs d'appoint.
Beautiful clear shot and a clear night. You can see the 4 points of light. Those are the 4 main engines continuing to burn. They will go for another minute or so, half a minute, then dropped like the boosters into the Atlantic. Yep. One of the advantages of a space base here is we can drop stages without having them fall on anybody.
This is one of the reasons why Kourou has been chosen, because you are well open for launches to the east and even to the north.
Ariane space, by the way, at 2 minutes, that was a minute ago, reached the speed of sound, if you're keeping score. Give us a rundown now, Pierre Michele, on the lower right-hand corner of the screen. There's some numbers and some letters, T, moyenne, S, A, V. What's all that?
Well, the 2 most interesting parameters are
Extinction
A and
du
V.
premier étage.
First stage has just been burnt out, says the DDO.
Séparation du premier étage.
Separation of the first
Allumage
stage.
du deuxième étage.
And the second stage has begun burning.
Les paramètres propulsifs du deuxième étage sont normaux et la trajectoire est normale.
Everything is fine. This is gives you an idea of what's going on up there. The second stage with 1 engine only. Go ahead. You're talking about the...
Yes, you have the direct lecture of the altitude and with A. So we are roughly at 100 kilometers. And V is for the velocity, the speed.
Right.
And these 2 data come by the telemetry data from the launcher. That is to say, from the inertial platform, the CIS you see on the screen.
You can see on the left of your screen the cursor crawling up the line there where it says SEP QUAF. That's the separation of the fairing, which you'll hear the DDO mention.
We have the jettisoning of the fairing during the second stage flight.
All right, we have dropped the fairing now. This is the fairing is 2 half shells, as you can see, is a carbon composite, and drops away, weighs roughly 700, 800 kilos in this version.
This is a short fairing, so about 750, 800.
Right. So the fairing, of course, keeping the payload from the Earth elements when we're down here, but we don't need the fairing anymore when we're...
Of course, it is used to protect the spacecraft during the atmospheric flight, but at this time it is useless, so we want to get rid of all the mess we can.
Right. You can see the velocity on the very bottom, almost 4 kilometers per second. The speed that we need to separate the satellite is 10 kilometers per second, so we're about halfway there. Second stage going to burn another half a minute roughly, taking Ariane to about 165 kilometers up. You'll hear the DDO shortly call out separation of the second stage and beginning of the third stage burn. You see the cursor on the left crawling up to SEP23. That's separation of the second and third stages.
Extinction du deuxième étage.
Second stage burnout.
Séparation du deuxième étage.
Separation.
Allumage du troisième étage.
All right, the third stage has begun.
Les paramètres propulsifs sont normaux.
And everything is okay up there. Third stage will burn, this is a long burn, about 13 minutes. until plus 1829 roughly, and burning what, 10 tons of a different fuel than in the first and second stage. This is cryogenic fuel.
Yeah, you are right.
This is when we saw the cryogenic arms, the feeder arms before
Les
liftoff, the arms
paramètres
that opened.
propulsifs
They
du
are used
troisième étage
to
sont
fill the
normaux.
third stage. This is the
Le
reason why
pilotage
we
est normal et la
can fill
trajectoire
the
est
first
normale.
and second the day before, because it's storable propellant.
And this is not storable.
This is not storable, it is cryotechnic. So very cold, boiling all the time.
How
This is the
cold?
reason why.
How cold? What's
How
the temperature?
cold? Well,
You as a propulsion
minus
expert, if you don't know that,
Acquisition du lanceur
yeah,
par la
it is
station
about
télémesure de Natal
minus
au Brésil.
180 degrees Celsius for oxygen and minus 250 for hydrogen. So very, very cold. And we can't, of course, load before, but we have to top up to compensate the venting until the very last time. This is the reason why the arms are opened during the synchronized sequence.
A shot there of the first downrange tracking station across the border at...
Les paramètres sont normaux et la trajectoire est normale.
The DDO is saying that everything is normal on board. Across the border at Natal in Brazil, which is the first of 3 downrange tracking stations, which will be following Ariane as she makes her way across the Atlantic in about a quarter of an hour. That's an ESA, an European Space Agency facility over there. We're going to go shortly to our people at Toucan, which is the observation post, to take a look at some of the invited guests up there. And
le comportement du troisième étage est normal et la trajectoire est normale.
As you're seeing these shots of our friends and invited guests at Toucan, the DDO says everything is fine. We have several observation posts here along the 18-kilometer stretch of the space base. Toucan is the closest one to the base, which is what, about a kilometer, 2 kilometers from the launch from the launch pad.
Well, a little more, between 3 and 4 kilometers.
4 kilometers.
Slightly less than 4. Yeah.
Right. But you get the best view from there at Toucan, I'm
yes,
told.
Yes, of course. Well, actually, the nearest people to the launcher is the people in the launch control center at less than 1 kilometer, but of course inside a big concrete building.
Right, we are in this third stage burn where we have a little time to stretch out, where we can talk about the satellite a little bit.
Les paramètres bord sont normaux et la trajectoire est normale. Il reste 10 minutes de propulsion.
10 minutes of gas, of fuel left in the third stage, says Pierre Rabardier, the DDO. We have a little time to stretch out. We'll talk about the operators. We'll talk about the satellite a little bit. We'll talk about the Ariane 4 42Ls, which we promised to give you a little explanation of why there have been only 12 of those. But before we do that, we always like to go to our Ariane Space quiz. I know, the moment you've all been waiting for. So listen up, guys. Tonight's question, the Ariane Space quiz, question number 133. You know we've launched 130... You know we've launched 132 times prior to this evening. Roughly, there's some other of our invited guests up at Toucan, some of the Japanese invited guests. We've launched 132 times prior to tonight, 175 satellites roughly. Most of these, as you know, are telecom
Les
satellites.
paramètres bord sont normaux et la trajectoire est normale.
I think the figure is of 172 commercial telecom sats operating today, 106 were launched by the Ariane family. All right, with that in mind, folks, how many transponders does that represent? Tonight's question again, how many transponders has the Ariane family made available to satellite operators and users since beginning service 20 years ago? All right, you people get to work. We'll give you the answer in a few minutes, but before we do that, we have just give you a check on the numbers there on the lower right-hand corner. Our altitude is?
The altitude is 260, so it is higher than the injection point. Now the trajectory will go a little down.
That's an interesting point. We go up and then we go down and we go back up again.
Yeah, the highest point is called the culmination. And after the trajectory goes a little down, to increase the speed. This is to optimize from an energetic point of view the performance, since what you said, we need about 220 kilometer velocity of about a little more than 10 kilometers per second.
More than 10 kilometers per second?
Well, around 10 kilometers per second.
To separate the satellite. Yeah.
To have the right speed to put a satellite into a geostationary transfer orbit.
Right, which is Ariane's mission. She puts the satellite into the geostationary transfer orbit, GTO,
yes.
and then the satellite with its own power gets up to its own slot on its own.
With
Tous les
its
paramètres
own
bord sont normaux
engine.
et la trajectoire est normale.
Right. All right, how about the speed now? On the very bottom of the screen,
The speed
little over
now
6
is
kilometers.
a little more than 6 kilometers per second, and now we'll see as soon as the altitude decreases, the speed will increase more and more to approach the 10 kilometers per second.
All right. We want to take a look at the calendar because in 20 years of service, of course, every day is some milestone for the Ariane Space Company. The month of October, full of launches,
Le vol du lanceur se poursuit normalement.
full of milestones. On the curve on the left, the lower left of your screen, you see, as Pierre Micheli was saying, we're dropping, and we're going to go back up again, as you can see. The cursor climbing up toward H10. H10 is another name for the third stage, right?
Yes, H for hydrogen, the propellant, and 10 it is the mass of the propellant and oxidizer.
And X meaning the extinction. That will be the third stage burnout in about 6 minutes.
6 minutes
from now. And then higher up on the curve, you see NSAT 110. That will be the point where the satellite will be separated. So in the month of October, very busy one for Ariane. Today is the 6th. On the 5th of October in 1998, we launched...
Acquisition de la télémesure lanceur par la station d'Ascension.
All right, the DDO's just said we've been picked up by our second downrange station, which is in the middle of the Atlantic, Ascension Island, belonging to the UK, of course. That's a former NASA station, which ESA has taken over and set up facilities there.
Les paramètres bord sont normaux et la trajectoire est normale.
There you are, Ascension Island. The final station will be all the way across the Atlantic on the African coast, but that's coming up. What were we saying? Flight 111 in 1998 was Alcatel-built W2 and Sirius. That was in Flight 111. Solidaridad for the Mexicans went up on October 7th in 94. Galaxy.
Le vol du lanceur se poursuit normalement et la trajectoire est normale.
Galaxy and SBS-6 in 1990 on October 12th. An Astra on October 18th. Flight 122 in 1999 was an Orion. Flight 112 in 98 was one of the qualification flights
Il reste 5 minutes de propulsion.
One of the qualification flights for the Ariane 5. 5 minutes left for the third stage burn. Another Ariane 5 qualification flight in 97 on the 30th of October. And Afrostar and some others on 1998 on the 28th of October, Flight 113. So you see the month of October, as every month on the calendar, full of history in 20 years for Ariane Space. Shall we talk about the satellite? Yeah, the NSAT people. NSAT, as you know, built by Lockheed Martin, which will go up at 110 degrees east above the Indonesian
Fin de
islands.
visibilité du lanceur par la station de Natal.
The DDO is saying we've just lost visibility from our first tracking station at Natal. That's normal, right?
Yes, it's okay. In fact, when the launcher gets out of the horizon from the station, you lose the telemetry. This is the reason why we need several stations to monitor all the flight.
NSAT covered Japan for telecom and broadcast services. 13 years lifespan, 24 KU band transponders. The satellite was supposed to fly on the next flight, Flight 134, but I think it was 3 weeks ago, moved over to this launcher, showing, of course, Ariane Space flexibility, changing. I think the old launcher was not this configuration, the 42L.
Yeah,
Is
you're
that
right.
Tous les paramètres
The original
bord sont
configuration
normaux.
was 44LP, that
Et la
is
trajectoire est normale.
2 liquid and 2 solid strap-on booster.
Which means we had to take off some boosters and put some more on. And
Yes,
yeah.
it means we have a minor operation to adapt the first stage with the new interface, take out the interface of the solid booster, and this can show that we can adapt one launcher from one mission to another very easily. it is a very little impact over the planing. So it's very flexible.
Il reste 3 minutes de propulsion.
3 more minutes left in the third stage burn. You're watching Ariane Spaceflight 133 and Sat 110.
Yeah. So
our altitude just under 200 kilometers and our speed over 8 kilometers per second.
We are down to about 200 kilometer altitude, and the speed is very high, 8.26. When we'll be at 9.8, roughly, that will be the right speed.
9.8?
Yeah.
The Space Communications Corporation, Tokyo-based, as is JSAT, founded in 1985, the SEC people, part of the Mitsubishi Group.
Les paramètres bord sont normaux et la trajectoire est normale.
They're operating currently 3 telecom sats. They're launching 2 more this year. A pioneer in the Japanese satellite communications for the Asia-Pacific region. The JSAT people will raise their fleet to 8. That is the boys from Lockheed Martin, the boys from Silicon Valley. To 8 satellites after tonight. JSAT created Japan's first satellite digital broadcast service. Another minute or so to go. We did say we wanted to mention the 42Ls. Just a word on that. There have only been 12 of those. The Ariane family, very flexible, as we mentioned, with 4 boosters or 2 boosters or no booster, liquid or solid boosters, depending on the payload. And for the 42L, the 12 42L payloads have been averaging, I would say, 3.5, 3.6 tons, like tonight's. The last one was Flight 129.
Il reste 1 minute de propulsion et le vol se poursuit normalement.
In April of this year, and Flight 126 in January of this year on 42Ls. Flights 115 and 114 in 1998. One of those was a SatMex, which was a big one, which was 4.2 tons, a little higher than the average. Flight 104 was a 42L. That was in 1997. That was a Lockheed Martin-built Intelsat. And that was the 12th flight of 1997, which was a record then, 19 days before the 2 flights.
30 minutes de propulsion. 30 secondes, pardon. Acquisition du lanceur par la station télémesure de Libreville au Gabon.
We've just been picked up by our final tracking station on the west coast of Africa in Libreville in Gabon. The last one to pick up during our broadcast, that is. There's a Kness station, which was set up in Kenya at Malindi for Ariane 5, but we won't be using that one. The record of 19 days between the 2 flights.
Extinction du 3e étage.
There's the end of the third stage burn.
Burnout.
And now what happens? Now we have the spin up and the spin down.
Début de la phase d'orientation du composite
ballistic phase.
Séparation du satellite.
The ballistic phase before we have
before the separation of the spacecraft.
Separation. Okay.
So we have no more propulsion, but the third stage mission continues since we use the gas, hydrogen from the tank through little thrusters with nozzles to put the spacecraft on the right position, the right orientation, and give him a little speed.
Visibilité par la station d'ascension.
We've just lost visibility from the ascension station. That's normal. You remember the quiz, folks? Anybody have any ideas of what the answer is? How many transponders has the Ariane family
La phase d'orientation se poursuit normalement.
Sent aloft since 1979? Do you have any idea?
No idea.
No idea. You can't guess.
Yeah.
Give me a guess.
Give me a wild guess. 2,500?
2,500. You're way off.
Of course.
3,620 is the number that I have. But folks, if you guessed anywhere between 3,500, 3,500, 36, 3,700, give us a call up here at 35862, and my friend Pierre Micheli will send you his personal check for $133, right?
I don't know. Dollar is too expensive now.
That's a lot of transponders, right? Because you have an average of what, 24 on a satellite, or 18?
Well, actually, in today's satellite, you can put more transponders than many years ago, since we are having bigger and bigger, and more powerful and heavier satellites. But we are very near to the separation.
Yes, we are. Coming up in just a few seconds.
Séparation NSAT 110.
And
Yes.
there we are. You called it right on the money. The good news, separation of NSAT 110. And you hear the applause, everybody shaking hands, everybody happy. Champagne parties coming up, of course. Now that the satellite is up, I want to give you just a rough idea of what's going to be happening in the first hours. The first acquisition at Urala, which is in Australia, I believe. And that these dates and times are universal time. Now that'll be tomorrow, the 7th of October. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 burns, 5 apogee burns between the 8th of October and the 14th. Solar array deployment on the 14th of October. In-orbit testing and drifting beginning on the 15th, and I don't know for how long, roughly 3 weeks or a month, I imagine. And I think we should be ready for service by early November, the 10th of November, for NSAT 110. You mentioned something about heavier satellites, and Ariane has just ordered 20 more Ariane 5s, precisely because the satellites' weights are becoming heavier and heavier in the market, yeah?
Yeah, you're right. In fact, with an Ariane 4 most powerful version, 44L.
We have a replay now of the launch for you.
Décollage.
Fine shots of the replay. We may have another replay coming up from another vantage point from another camera, and we'll go to that. We started to talk about the weights. While we're waiting for the speeches, we'll have Jacques Rossinol from Ariane Space and the customer speeches afterward. While we're waiting, you mentioned the heavier satellites coming up on the market, and Ariane has just ordered 20 Ariane 5s. Of 6 of the 9 GTO, geostationary transfer orbit contracts, here comes your second replay. We'll be back with the contracts in just a minute.
Décollage. Les paramètres au bord sont normaux.